Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. A special Halloween episode, if you will. But instead of doing a horror film, we're going to do the classic 1984 comedy, Ghostbusters. Directed by Ivan Reitman, written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, William Atherton. That's about it. Some other folks that you probably know but don't know their names. Just a heads up, we do like to talk about the entire movie, so if you haven't seen Ghostbusters, first of all, it's a shame. And second of all, go watch it.
Who hasn't seen Ghostbusters?
Watch it and then come back and listen to the episode. And I do want to throw out there real quick, if you have any Amazon purchases to make in the future, go to cinemaheroes.com, click on our Amazon banner. Doesn't cost you anything extra, but we get a tiny little percentage of the money you spend, and that's always appreciated for the podcasting costs. All right, let's start with you, John. Do you have a recollection of seeing this movie for the first time?
Yes.
Do you?
Well, no. I do not have a memory of seeing it for the first time, but I do remember some of my earliest movies or memories are watching Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Right, same here with me. This was released in 1984, so I was a year old when it came out, so I don't recall seeing it for the first time, and I honestly don't know if I saw the movie first or the cartoon show. But I know I watched both all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm pretty sure I saw the movie first. It came out when I was born, the year I was born, and like I said, my earliest memories, I just remember going to the video store. I think this was pre-Blockbuster, maybe, or at least before it had taken off.
Right.
And just seeing that black VHS case with the Ghostbuster logo.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that was it. It said Ghostbusters on the bottom.
It did, yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure the VHS case was just the iconic logo, the red symbol with the stripe, and the ghost behind it.
Right.
It didn't have any of the actors on the cover, I don't believe.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so, it was just a black background, the logo, and on the side it said Ghostbusters, and I think underneath the logo it said Ghostbusters on the front.
Yeah.
But it was it caught your eye.
Yeah,
because it was just so plain.
Right.
But there's this cartoon ghost on the front.
It was a cool symbol.
Yeah. I had to have rented that thing probably every other week.
Right.
Eventually, to the point where my mom did the Batman thing, where she had an edited copy for me.
Oh, an edited version. So you have
I had an edited
memory of it.
So, yeah, there were some parts taken out that were not crucial, but things that definitely made things not make sense when I was a kid. Even as a 4-year-old kid, I'm like, they said this happened, but they didn't show that.
Yeah, I never saw it. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just looked up the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, which was on TV from 1986 to 1991. So, it's very possible that I watched the cartoon show first before I saw the movie, but I know we owned the VHS, so I remember I could watch it whenever I wanted to. And that, and I did. I watched it all the time. But I also remember watching the cartoon show all the time, and I had a ton of those Ghostbuster toys.
Yeah, see, like I said in an earlier podcast, I had each Ghostbuster figure, but it was the ones where they did the scary faces.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I had...
You, squeeze their legs, right?
Yeah, you'd squeeze their legs.
I think Egon, you squeeze his legs, and I think his jaw dropped and his eyes popped out, or something like that.
And his tie would come out.
Right, yeah.
He'd, shoot out. Ray, his, hair would go up, and he'd have these really long eyeballs.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Peter did.
I don't either.
And I think Winston, his jaw came down too.
He had a big mouth or something. His jaw dropped. I don't remember what Venkman did. A lot of them, I think, was kind of focused around the mouth.
Yeah.
You know, they almost had like a weird unhinged jaw.
Yeah, I think all of them had something to do with the mouth.
Yeah. Even Ray, I think, had a small, like,
right,
kind of piece that came down. Yeah, I think I had all of those, but I can't. You're right. I don't really remember what Peter's. I
think the one that stuck out to me the most was Egon.
Yeah.
And then I had like 2 or 3 of the monsters. I think I had the old lady, if you remember her.
Vaguely.
I don't remember what she did. And then I had because these did a movement too.
Yeah. Well, they had like all sorts of different volumes, I guess, if you will.
Oh yeah, right.
They had they had like, I remember there was a one line that was supposed to be like, I think it was supposed to be like sports, like athletes.
Right, I had the football player.
Yeah, but then you could like switch it. Like I think you hit a button and it like would spin around and he'd look like a ghost or something. Does that sound familiar to you, or am I thinking of something else?
I think the one that I'm talking about, I think his like belly plopped open and he had a giant mouth or something. Something to do.
Weird.
They liked the mouth for some reason.
Yeah. Sounds like it. I still have a lot of them in storage. I even have the I had the Ecto-1, and I had the building, their headquarters.
Yeah.
And it had these like grates on each level because you could pour in like the
slime that came with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I never had it go from each level.
Yeah, I never had it.
3-level building. It was pretty sweet.
I had a friend that had it, and I remember seeing the commercial for it and just being like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
And then they had this like New York building or something in the commercial, but it was not a part of the set at all.
Right.
And I don't remember. Like, I think also they had Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the commercial or something, which I never had. Like I said, the only ones I had were those figurines.
I think I had a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He was like a plastic, because I know they also sold like plush versions of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. You know, like almost like dolls. And this one was like a plastic like figure, and it was decently, it was bigger than the action figures, than the regular figures. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember loving those toys. And I remember when my mom sold all my Ninja Turtle toys, I like blew up at her, and she was like, "Fine, I won't sell any more toys." And so, thankfully, because of that, I still have all those Ghostbuster toys, as far as I know, unless she's gotten rid of them now, which is possible. But no,
I would love to see those. By the way,
yeah. Well, next time I'm in Georgia, I'll see if we can go up into my parents' attic and see if they're still there.
Nice. Have a old Ghostbusters toy party up in your attic.
Yeah, it would be sweet. It'll bring back the memories. But no, I was going to say the building, the Ghostbusters building, that along with it was like the Jurassic Park Welcome Center, and it came with like the fences, like you could put, like the Welcome Center was like the centerpiece, and then it had fences that would go along, and then that was the gate, the Jurassic Park gate. I had that as well, and I think those two things were like probably the coolest toys of my childhood, I think.
Yeah, I didn't have any of those big play sets. Like I said, the only one I had was like the turtle sewer, but it wasn't that big. It was like maybe like 2 or 3 feet long, if that.
Yeah. I just watched, I don't know if you've, we can probably cut this part out, but have you watched Comic Book Men on Netflix?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm in the middle of season 3 right now.
Okay, so you've already seen the episode that I just watched recently where they brought in this G.I. Joe battleship.
The biggest playset ever.
Yeah, that thing was huge.
It took them all day to build it.
Yeah, what were they thinking? The makers of that toy, like, what were they thinking? Who could possibly have room for that? That thing was like 8 feet long or something like that.
Well, I mean, G.I. Joe was huge. It was a little bit past my time, probably by 5 or 6 years.
I kind of felt like it was a little past my time too, but it was, my brother was into G.I. Joe. So I think a lot of the G.I. Joe figures we did have were my brother's, and so I kind of got I was like able to ride the wave a little bit for a tiny bit. Mm-hmm. That and like Thundercats and Transformers were almost a little before my time, but I was able to kind of get it a little bit through my brother.
Interesting. Yeah, I never had any of those. I didn't have He-Man. So
good times. Those toys. Well, I guess we can jump into the movie that inspired all that.
yeah.
Like I said, I don't really have a recollection of seeing it for the first time, but I do remember watching it a lot as a kid. And it's interesting to watch it now as an adult and to remember it as when you were watching it when you were a kid. Because there's so much comedy and there's so much little just like one-liners that go right over your head when you're a kid.
It's ridiculous.
I noticed it right off the bat.
This movie is.
Yeah, right off the bat in the very beginning when they're in the library. It's one of my favorite lines that Ray says right in the beginning. He goes, "Listen, did you smell that?" And that cracks me up every time.
I didn't pick up on that. See, there's like 1,000 of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
it's
the first
they're
time
they're quick and they're subtle, and it's just that's like some of the best humor, I think.
I remember the first time I watched it. Really, I mean, I'd maybe seen it once or twice when I was like in 5th grade and maybe in middle school or whatever. But when I was dating my wife, we rented it because I don't remember if she had seen it or not, but wanted to watch it with her, and I just was blown away at the comedy. I was like, I do not remember this movie being funny, and it is hysterical.
Uh-huh. And a lot of that, I mean, these, the three main guys, Harold Ramis, Dan Aykroyd, and Bill Murray, obviously they all came from, Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray were a big part of SNL, especially when SNL started, and Harold Ramis came from Second City, and I think he was part of SCTV. I'm not entirely sure on that, but they all came from like this sketch comedy background, and they all, actually I was watching some of the special features today, and apparently when Dan Aykroyd came up with the idea for this movie, it was supposed to be a movie for him and John Belushi, but then John Belushi passed away.
That's right.
And so they reworked it, and apparently it was going to be like this story where they were like, they weren't the only Ghostbusters. They weren't like the only ghost busting company. There was like all sorts of different ghost busting companies, and they were just like one of the few. And it was like Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis who came in and were like, maybe we should do a going into business story.
Yeah.
And so it kind of got changed around.
I read that it was also supposed to take place in the future.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Man, can you imagine? It wouldn't have even made our podcast, I don't think. You never know, though. You never know.
You never know. It could have been just as good, but I also think, Ivan Reitman said that it would have been practically impossible to make because of just how big it was, especially back then. The budget would have been huge or something, so they scaled it back, and I think it really, obviously it really works. It's a huge kind of cult phenomenon. I wouldn't even say it's really a cult phenomenon. It's everybody loves Ghostbusters.
It's way up there. I put it in my top favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
That's something that's interesting to think about. Is this movie was not a big deal when it was being made. I mean, the idea is so original. That's one of the things I love about Ghostbusters. Is, I mean, when this thing came out, it's like nothing had ever been close to this idea, and
exterminators for ghosts. Like, I don't think anybody had thought of that.
and to make it a comedy,
right?
But yeah, I mean, the success, the boom it had was just totally unexpected. I'm sure just probably. I know Star Wars was a big surprise hit for him, but this was probably even a bigger surprise to the studio, Columbia Pictures.
I'm sure.
Speaking of which, Columbia Pictures, I love the beginning of the movie, the opening, with just the silence, and you hear that little. That's you got to start there with the Ghostbusters. If you don't see that part, you haven't watched the whole movie.
Let's talk about performances, which it's pretty much just going to consist of us talking about how great these guys are. But I really like that they did this. I guess kind of goes into writing as well as performances, but But I really did like how the three founders of Ghostbusters are very different, yet they all have similar interests. So it's Egon is very much the brains of the operation. I would say he's probably the smartest.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
Ray,
without debate.
Huh?
I said I think that's without debate.
Yeah, Ray, who I think is not equally as smart, but who's
right. He's
smart.
He is. You find Egon, which I don't think I had ever picked up on until this viewing. Egon actually asks Ray for his opinion on things.
Right. And Ray really, I think, has the most kind of love for the paranormal, and he probably has the most heart out of all three of them. Especially, it really comes out in the scene where they're looking to buy the abandoned fire station. And they're trying to haggle with the realtor, and he's like, "This place is great. We got to move in here." And then Peter Venkman, I would say, is the personality, I guess, of the group.
Oh, yeah.
He's the smart mouth. So, and their comedy works so well off each other. Again, in that beginning scene, like he's like, "This reminds me of that time you tried to drill a hole through your head," and he's like, "That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me." Like, just that stuff it's again so subtle, but they play off each other so well.
Yeah. I've got a couple lines from that scene too. We've got right after they come out of the library, and Peter asks, "Egon, are you serious about trying to catch a ghost?" He goes, "I'm always serious." And then you've got when they come out with the loan.
Yeah,
it's
about the interest rate.
My parents left me that house. I was born there. And then he goes, "You're not going to lose this house. Everybody has 3 mortgages these days." But at 19% interest, you didn't even bargain with the guy. And then Spangler says, "The first 5 years alone, it's in interest. It's going to cost you $75,000. Oh,
and you see Ray, his face he's just like, you can see his heart drop. Basically, he's like, "Oh my god." Yeah, some really good writing, I think, in this movie. And I like, it's one of those convenient things where they start this business of ghost catching, and then there's this whole montage of them catching ghosts and everything. But I love their first actual assignment where they go to the hotel and they have to catch Slimer, who isn't referred to as Slimer in this. It's I think that was probably a product of the cartoon show. But they go catch him, and they practically destroy that hotel. And that's something I never really noticed either until this time around, is how there's a woman waiting for that banquet hall. And that hotel manager is like, "I assure you, the room will be ready. It's fine." And you just hear them flipping over tables and destroying things. I thought that was great. I never noticed that woman waiting for that room until this time around.
To build on that, I love it's the first call. They're eating the last of their food. And they get the call. Janine says, "Oh yeah, they'll be totally discreet."
Yeah.
And then they come flying up in their Ecto-1
with sirens blaring.
And then Peter busts through the door and goes, "Hey, anyone see a ghost?"
And then what's great about that too, and this is something I never noticed until this time around, is as they're walking in, they spot a woman walk by, and Peter looks at her and smiles, and then the hotel manager comes up from behind him, and Peter Venkman acts like he's scared. The hotel manager comes up and he's like, "Oh, you're good, you're in." He's like, and Peter Venkman's like, "Oh God!" Really? He jumps. Yeah. And then he shakes his head like, "This guy jumping out at me."
Well, we're talking about the different personalities of them, and I was going to point this out. So they're all going to school for paranormal.
Well, they're not in school. They're professors or they have like a grant, a research grant at the school. They work at the school, I guess.
That's right.
At the university.
But it's all for paranormal
research and all that, yeah.
Yeah. And
when the movie starts off with Peter Venkman, he's really just trying to hit on this girl, but he's doing an experiment trying to do, I guess it's a telepathy experiment. He's trying to see if these people can actually see the images on the card, which the guy does at the very end, and he still shocks him for it.
Right. And I've heard people say, "Hey, is that guy supposed to be like some kind of character later on that's a psychic?" I think it was just a coincidence that he got the last one because he missed the first. He missed the first two cards.
Yeah, and she got none of them.
Right. But I was going to say, so he's studying this stuff, but then he goes in the when they're going through the library and just the stuff that he says and just his reactions is like it's almost like he's very skeptical about the whole concept. And I'm like, why does he have a PhD in parapsychology?
Right. It's a good question, and I think it's PhDs are obviously a lot of work, so why put in the work for something that you don't really necessarily believe in? And the only answer I can really think of is he thinks it's easy. Maybe it's like
a slacker job.
Yeah, it's exactly like it's just he was able to probably kind of fake his way through his dissertation and everything, and they were like, "Oh, okay, who knows?"
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. He's very skeptical of it. Pretty much up until he sees a ghost for the first time, which I guess is in the library.
Right. And at that point, you can tell he's like, he wasn't expecting there to be any kind of evidence of any kind, because he's skeptical.
Uh-huh.
And, Ray and Egon are, especially Ray.
All about
it.
Yeah.
Super excited and freaked out. But speaking of which, I don't remember if it was you or someone else that told me, but in that scene when the bookcase falls, that was apparently an accident.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they just used
I did not know
footage.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and I love that whole sequence of events in that beginning of the scene where they find the books being stacked, and Ray spouts out this is just like the incident at blah 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 blah. He's got that knowledge right at the front of his brain, and Peter goes, "Yeah, because no human being could stack books like this." Right. And then when the bookcase falls, and he looks to Ray, and he's like, "Ever happened to you before?" And Ray just shakes his head. He's like, "Okay." First time, I think is what he says.
Yeah, it just shakes.
Yeah, it's very. If that's true, if the bookcase wasn't supposed to fall and did just fall like that, kudos to them for staying in character and just coming up with that awesome kind of comedic.
Unfortunately. Moment. I don't think they did, because if you notice, right after it falls, they cut.
Well, they have did they cut?
Yeah.
It didn't. They don't stay on the wide shot for those lines?
No. They cut.
Oh, okay.
They cut to like a close up of Peter and Ray. So
gotcha.
I think the scare when it falls is what the actual
genuine
footage is. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, then never mind.
Because I was thinking the same thing too, and then when we watched it for this, I was like, oh, that's a shame. Even so, they're still geniuses.
Oh, yeah.
This movie proves it. Also another thing that someone mentioned to me, unless it was you, was that Slimer, John Candy, was originally supposed to be in this movie.
I heard
instead of Bill Murray.
Oh, really? Because I heard it was supposed to be John Candy instead of Rick Moranis playing Sigourney Weaver's neighbor.
Yeah, I think you might be right, actually.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I guess he dropped out of the film because he hadn't died yet. He died in the 90s, I believe.
Right. I think he might have had another film obligation or something.
Oh, okay.
But so the reason I'm bringing that up is because Slimer was apparently created to kind of be like a ghost John Candy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like how he's like just downing all the food. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I thought maybe they were okay with John Candy leaving the movie, but I wonder if they were mad at him for leaving the movie and they decided to make this, because that seems kind of mean. Like, obviously John Candy's overweight, but like he leaves the movie and he's like, hey, we instead we made like a little homage to you, and he's like, oh great, let me see it, and it's this fat ghost just not doing nothing but eating food the whole time.
Well, I think John Candy kind of uses weight for his comedy, so
I'm sure. Kind
of like.
But it's one thing
Chris
when he
Farley.
does it. It's another thing when other people do it, I guess. Does that make sense?
Well, maybe he gave him permission. I don't know.
Maybe he did.
And that could just be a rumor. But
I don't know. It's interesting to think about, though. I mean, I guess I could see it.
It's kind of like, what would John Candy be as a ghost? And then they came up with slime.
Green and small and just eating everything in sight. John Candy's like, thanks, guys, I guess. Oh, speaking of okay, going back to toys.
Okay.
And the hotel scene. The trap. That was one of my favorite toys.
The trap.
Yep, you like slide it across the floor and step on the little pedal and the doors open.
Yep.
That
did
thing
you have the
was
backpack?
Amazing. I did.
The Proton pack?
It had like the little foam stream.
I got rid
lost
of that
thing.
thing.
A long time ago. Yeah. I think it spun around or something when you pulled the trigger, but I think I could be wrong. I know it made noises.
You're thinking of another one, but I think I know what you're talking about. Oh, right. No, it was another one. And then I always wanted the thing that Egon had, the one that reads for
the PKE meter or something like that.
PKE meter.
PKE meter.
That is right.
That thing was cool too. Yeah,
but
I don't know if I had. I don't think I had that one.
But the trap would go. There was a slot on the proton pack for the trap where you could put it on the side.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, that was awesome. I definitely went. There was at least one Halloween where I was a Ghostbuster. For sure.
I would go outside with that thing on my back and just play Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. We would have gotten along if we had grown up in the same neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Gone to people's houses. Have you seen any ghosts?
It always makes me think, too, of a line from Part 2 where Egon, the guy's like, yo, can I get one of those proton packs for my brother? And Egon's like, the proton pack is not a toy. He like shuts him down really hard.
So let's see. So after the hotel, they become famous.
Yeah, that's the montage where after that they're catching all sorts of ghosts. They go on to talk shows. Larry King's talking about them. Casey Kasem's talking about them. Yeah, they become they're on all the magazine covers. Everybody wants a part of the Ghostbusters. And actually, at this point, Dana has already gone to them because she saw Zool in her fridge.
Right.
And Peter, being the somewhat bad person that he is, I guess, only goes over to Dana's apartment, really to try to kind of hook up with Dana. And again, being kind of skeptical, just kind of almost makes fun of her the whole time about everything.
Right.
Because he like opens the fridge and he's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you eat like this," and pulls out all this stuff.
Yeah.
And she kind of is. He's a tiny bit creepy in that scene, I think. You know,
he is. He is very creepy. She had to shove
comes on a little
his
strong
face out through the door.
Yeah. So
no kiss.
So she, I think, has lost all faith in the Ghostbusters at that point, and then she sees how big they're becoming. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. She's doing like sit-ups in her living room when it shows her watching them, and you can tell there's a much different feeling that she has towards the Ghostbusters at that point.
Uh-huh. After the montage, they're obviously getting very busy, so they have to hire Winston Zeddemore, played by Ernie Hudson. And once he's hired,
that's when Walter Peck comes in and talks to.
Yes. Walter Peck, played by William Atherton, who is also the same kind of smarmy jerk like he played in Die Hard.
Yeah, I heard he got a lot of crap for this role. Like, people were actually really mean to him.
Oh, really?
Hated him after this.
I've never understood that. Like, I've heard about that, too, with, remember the brother from the Wonder Years? Like, how much of a kind of a bully he was? I remember hearing stories about people going up to him and like wanting to punch him in the face and stuff. And I'm just like, it's weird how people can't separate the actor from the part. But I, it's almost hard to not see him like that. William Peck.
He plays it so well. It's just...
Yeah, and especially because it's so similar to the character he played in Die Hard. It's like, that's how he is,
Right. But he does play it so well. You could just see it in his eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and watching it as a kid, and you see, it's like you envelop his facial features as just this guy that's a jerk.
Uh-huh.
So when you look at him, you're like, that guy is the tool.
Even in Biodome. Remember that?
I have not seen Biodome.
You've never seen Biodome?
Never seen Biodome.
Well, you're not missing much.
I didn't think so. That's one of the reasons I haven't seen it.
I was going to say, it's not a movie you can really watch now that you're an adult.
Uh-huh.
When I was 13 when I saw it, I thought it was funny. And because I liked it when I was 13, I can kind of still like it now, even though it's stupid.
Yeah.
But now, there's no way I can recommend it to you now. To tell you to watch this Pauly Shore, Stephen Baldwin.
Right. I knew Pauly Shore was in it.
Comedy. So, anyway, he's a jerk pretty much. He plays the villain a lot, it seems like. But he does it really well.
Yeah.
And he works for the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. And so he's got concerns about their storage facility and their whole operation, basically. And I think Peter essentially tells him to come back with a warrant.
Yep.
Right? He's like, get out of here. We don't have to talk to you. Come back with a warrant. And then it's right around this time that Dana actually gets kidnapped / possessed by the gatekeeper.
Zool.
That's right. By Zool.
Speaking of which, didn't pick up on this as a kid, but it's kind of a sexual innuendo we've got going here with Keymaster and Gatekeeper.
Yeah, I would say so, especially if when Bill Murray shows up and she says, "Are you the Keymaster?" And he says, "No." And she slams the door in his face. Right. And then he goes, "Yes." And then and then there's a little bit of a heated moment there, and he has to be like, "Whoa, settle down."
Yeah.
He actually says he injects her with Thorazine, I believe, and knocks her out for a little while.
Right. The that scene, part of the Heedy scene was deleted or erased from my edited version.
It?
Yeah. So, and another one that was
skipped over that when you were a kid.
Yeah, and then the other one that I was talking about was when she opens up the fridge and Zool's in the refrigerator. My mom took that out.
Well, that's kind of an important part.
Yeah, I know. So like she's like, I saw this creature in my refrigerator, and it's like, no,
I don't recall that at all. Did she at least left in the eggs on the counter though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so at least you saw that.
Really odd to watch as a kid.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about that scene now is there's a bag of Stay Puft Marshmallows sitting right there too. Which is something, the first time you watch the movie, you don't think anything about. It's a bag of marshmallows.
Yeah.
But obviously once you get to the end, and then that's kind of a nice little Easter egg, I guess you can call it, for repeat viewings.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So
I'm really curious. I'm sure I could listen to the commentary and find out, but I'm thinking, obviously the counter was like a stove. But did they just start like heating up those eggs, and they just I've never obviously tried to heat up an egg while it's still in the shell. Does it burst out of the shell like that when it gets hot enough?
No, they typically don't. I don't know. I was going to say they hard boil, but I guess you need water for that.
Yeah. And usually you have to... Actually, it's been a while since I've made hard-boiled eggs. But I know after they are in boiling water, you have to put them into like cold water to kind of try to solidify them. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to listen to the commentary to see exactly how they did that egg trick. I do know that in the beginning, in the library scene, the books that go from one shelf to the other is just books on wire.
Yeah.
Some guy like above the shot is just moving a book on a wire from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
Apparently,
it makes me miss...
The ghost in that library scene was supposed to be a lot scarier.
Really?
Yeah, but so...
At the end? They had to like bring it... They had to kind of scale it back a little?
Yeah. And I saw the like the concept art for it somewhere online. Check it out. Look up like original library Ghostbuster ghost or whatever.
Yeah, I will. It makes me miss movies from the 80s and 90s. You know, I was watching trailers for the Alien movies last night, and it just reminded me of how much, you know, so much stuff is CG nowadays. We've gotten used to it, and it doesn't look bad by any means. But there's something that's now nostalgic, I guess, about a movie where they actually had to create these creature effects.
Yeah.
You know, they're all like, even though they're puppets or whatever, they're puppeteers, you know, controlling them. They did it in camera, and like all those sets that were built for all that stuff. It's, you know, I miss that.
That's true Hollywood magic right there.
Yeah.
I
wish they did
places
more of
like
that.
Universal Studios were built.
Right, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Sets.
Yeah, and I have a whole complaint about Universal Studios, how, you know, the whole idea about Universal Studios was to put you in the movie. And now it seems like Universal Studios and not just them, but like theme parks that are kind of, I would say, you know, maybe Disneyland too. Now it's all a lot of just 3D stuff.
Yep.
It's like 3D rides. And you're like, well, I can go to the theater and go see a 3D movie.
Yeah.
For, you know, $15 or whatever. So...
Yeah, it's a big
I want to
cop-out.
I want to go to Universal Studios, and I want to be. It's like, you know, the King Kong ride at Universal Studios Hollywood is cool. I like it. It's fun, but I miss the old King Kong, even though it was somewhat cheesy, you know, and it was obviously an animatronic gorilla, and it kind of had its shaky movements and stuff. Like, it was so much more entertaining, I think.
You look over and there's this gigantic ape.
Yeah.
Like, literally there.
You could reach out and touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than having to put on 3D glasses and it, you know. I mean, that 3D screen is really cool, don't get me wrong, on the new King Kong ride. It's like a 360, practically, kind of screen. And so it's really neat, and it's fun to do, but it's, in my opinion, it's not nearly as cool as the original.
Not as impressive.
Right, and it's one of those weird things. It's like, why I'm going on a little rant here, but why have just a 3D movie when you can build a set and have it actually be in 3D?
Yeah.
You know? So, that's just that's why Jurassic Park, I think, is one of my favorite rides at that theme park.
It's going to get taken down, man.
I'm going to be sad the day that it does, but right now it's still going.
Didn't I read that they took down Jaws?
In Orlando, they did, yeah. Well, they don't have a Jaws ride in Hollywood. It's part of the tram tour, just like King Kong is. But yeah, the Jaws ride, which was fun in Orlando, you got in a boat and you had like a tour guide, and he was supposed to be like taking you around to Amity Island, and then you'd hear like the music, and the shark would come out of the water, and he'd have a gun that he was supposed to be shooting at the shark and everything. Yeah, I thought it was awesome. It was really fun.
I went there with my wife on our honeymoon, and our guide was hilarious. He was like shooting the gun like with his back turned and through his legs and all this stuff. It was great.
I feel like, you do it often enough, you got to kind of do something to keep it entertaining for yourself as one of those guys. I remember the when I wrote it, this was in 2009, was the last time I was there. I remember thinking, like, I would love... Because our tour guide for the Jaws ride, I thought, was a little weak. Like, he was kind of bored, I think, with it. He did an okay job, but he didn't have the energy that you'd want, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, like, man, that would be so much fun. Obviously, I think it would get boring. You're probably doing it, 100 times a day. But I think it would just be fun to, like, be there and just pretend like you're scared every time Jaws comes out of the water.
Yes. It would
be completely
over the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would suck if you had. Oh no, here comes Jaws on your right.
Yeah. Oh, we better hide. You're just like, give it a little more, man. Just a little more. But there was a little girl on that ride. I don't know how old she was. She was probably 6 or 7 or something. I don't know. But she did not like it. As soon as that shark popped up, she was crying her eyes out for the rest of the little boat ride. She was not a happy camper. I felt bad for her. But yeah, they tore that down because they're expanding, I guess, Harry Potter World down there.
Uh-huh.
Which is cool. It's Harry Potter World, but E.T., Jaws, King Kong, and like a couple others were like the original rides.
Back to the Future.
Universal Studios. Back to the Future, yeah, which is gone as well. And in my opinion, Terminator 2, which I think came later.
Yes, that was
Terminator
a later
2,
edition.
Yeah, but that was one of my memories of... Because I didn't go to... First time I went to Universal Studios, I was in high school.
Uh-huh.
But E.T. is still there, and I'll be sad the day that they close E.T. And I'll be sad the day they close Jurassic Park. And they closed Terminator 2 out here in Hollywood and built Despicable Me, the Despicable Me 3D thing in its place. So I'm a little bummed about that.
Yeah, but, that's a shame.
And
I see, I'm sure they're under pressure. They've got to keep up with the current.
Yeah, and I like Terminator 2 was dated. The last time even when I first moved to California and I went to Universal Studios, I rode. It's not really a ride. It's a 3D kind of / live action show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the first 3D things, and it was before 3D was so popular in regular movie theaters. So it was kind of an attraction back then. But it was dated. I mean, like you have to stand in this like hallway at first and watch this video, and it's straight out of the 90s. It's got cheesy effects and everything. So I mean, it was time, I guess. I was hoping they'd update it, But
see, I went to it. Where you went to that in Orlando?
I went to it in Orlando, but I also went to it out here in Hollywood.
Because when I went to the Terminator 2 one, it was like a auditorium setting.
Yeah, no, well, that's what I'm talking about. It was like half of a live. It was like a live show / 3D kind of presentation, 3D movie, because there were actors that came out who pretended to be Arnold and pretended to be John Connor, and they shot and stuff. And then like when they went into the future, they went towards the screen, and then it became a 3D movie with Arnold and Edward
I gotcha.
Furlong.
And now, yeah, I think I remember that hallway thing now that you're talking about.
Yeah, they put you in like a small kind of lobby area, and this woman came out, usually a woman. I think it was always a woman. She came out and she was like, "Welcome to Cyberdyne, whatever."
That's right.
And she always said super. If you remember that. She's like, "How you doing today?" Super. But then they made you watch a video on Cyberdyne, and then while you're watching that video, Sarah Connor and John Connor hack into the feed.
That's right.
And so they tell you that like Cyberdyne is terrible and all that stuff, and then they kind of cut that. The Cyberdyne people cut that feed, and that the host comes back and she's like, "Sorry about that. Okay, now you can enter the auditorium." So
yeah. Okay.
I'm hoping, Back to the Future, the ride, is on I think it's on the Blu-ray, but I know it's on a 2-disc DVD that came out a few years back.
Uh-huh.
After they took the ride down and they put in The Simpsons, they put the ride on the DVD. So it's not nearly as cool, obviously. It's just the video of it.
It's still cool to be, yeah. It's still cool to...
It's still, you have it. Yeah, you have, you can watch it. It has all the lobby videos, too. Like, while you're waiting in line, it has all those videos you can watch.
Uh-huh.
So I hope they do that with Terminator 2 at some point, put out like a Blu-ray with Terminator the ride.
Hey, who knows? In 20 years, they might be able to put the ride on the well, we won't have any kind of physical media, I don't think, but you literally might be able to sit on your couch and have like a mechanical couch ride with with the ride on your walls. Yeah, like
put in the setting code into your couch so it knows what to do. Yeah, who knows? We've gotten way off topic, and I honestly can't even remember how we got onto this topic. I was talking about practical effects and things like that, but I guess we should get back to Ghostbusters.
Let's get back to Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
So we were at so she gets abducted by Zool is where we were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
which is a frightening scene, by the way. For I'm surprised I watched this as young as I was.
That got cut out for me too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not surprising. Because I do remember that scene being... I don't think it ever gave me nightmares, but I do remember thinking that scene was kind of scary when I was a kid.
Definitely.
The arms coming out of the chair and grabbing her and stuff.
I let my kids watch it, and I kind of cringe every time that scene comes up.
Yeah.
So I love Rick Moranis.
Once he gets possessed?
Yeah. Running up to the restaurant, banging on the glass.
Somebody let me in.
And then when they just show him sliding down the glass and the entire restaurant's just silent looking at him. And then they go back
and then goes back to dinner. Yeah. Yeah. I like Rick Moranis in this movie a lot, and especially once he becomes... It's like Vin's something, the Keymaster.
Right.
And he's really funny when he does that. I love when Egon is taking, tests on him. And he's just handing him things. He's handing him like a frying pan. And he's like, "Thank you, Vince." And then he hands him the lamp. Just like a little kid. One of the things I don't know if I ever noticed this before. Maybe I did and I just forgot about it. But when Egon is like scanning Rick Moranis,
the dog.
Yeah, you see the dog face or whatever is. I thought that was really interesting. It's like a weird aura or something. Like he's got the dog aura.
You never picked up on that?
Like I said, I might have, and I just forgot about it. But I definitely thought it was cool when I was watching it this time around.
Yeah, it always stood out to me. It was like, that's crazy.
I think, you know what, and maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't know if I ever really, because I know I saw it, but I wonder, I don't think I ever connected that it was him. You know what I mean? Like that Egon was scanning him, and that was showing up on the
I
computer.
Gotcha.
I just thought like it was there, like somehow Egon already knew about it or something.
Yeah.
So it was like, it clicked this time around. I guess I'm just stupid.
Yes. So, proceeding on, Walter Peck comes back.
With a vengeance.
With a police officer and a construction worker, or whatever he is. He's got a construction hat on.
Yeah, so he's actually like an electrical worker for Con Edison, which is like the electric company.
Uh-huh.
So he's brought that guy so that he can shut down the power, I think, for the building.
Yeah. I like how the police officer calls him Pencil Neck.
Well, I like how William Peck says, if he tries that again, shoot him. Like he's got the authority to tell a cop to just shoot somebody.
This guy is just, he's complete jerk.
Yeah.
And that's a point I wanted to bring up. And why I brought up the Egon Spengler, it says he's always serious, is because when they release, when they shut down the storage facility, and they're out there, they run out of the building, and Walter Peck's like, "These guys are responsible," blah blah blah. It just sets off Egon. So he finally has had it, and he's not serious anymore. Well, I guess he is serious. But
he's very serious.
Really serious. I loved that. Walter Peck was able to just spark that fuse.
Yeah, well, that's one of the most infuriating parts of the whole movie. Is like they told him repeatedly in that scene, if we shut this thing down, it's going to be horrible. It could be like setting a bomb off in the city. Yeah. And he's like, I don't care, shut it down. And so as soon as they shut it down, and that's what happens, he's like, you need to arrest these men. They set off like a bomb or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're all like, we told you that was going to happen.
So that's when all the ghosts start getting released back. All the ones they've caught are back out there. Slimer's out there.
Right. Slimer's out there eating hot dogs. There's a dead guy driving cab.
Yeah. Jogger.
So, yeah. So they need the Ghostbusters now more than ever. But they end up in jail.
They do. And I like how they're sitting there talking about like all the stuff that's going on, their theories.
I like how the police let them keep their blueprints to the building. Like, they didn't take that away from them or anything.
Yeah.
He's like, we just want to talk about the blueprints. And they're like, oh, it's whatever. All right, Ghostbusters.
Let the nerds have their blueprints.
Let the nerds have their blueprints. Yeah, exactly. And I also like that Winston was not there. He pulls up at the end with Ray and still gets arrested. And he says that in jail. He's like, I wasn't even there. He's like, I just work for these guys.
Right. Speaking of pulling up, did you notice Egon... When he's studying Rick Moranis' character, what's his name anyway? His character.
His name is Louis Tully.
Tully.
He goes by
right.
Vince something when he's possessed.
Right. But he's studying Louis, and then he gets a call from Peter. Right.
Yeah.
And he's telling him about the sedative that he gave her.
Yeah.
And but Egon's like, I need you here now. So Peter goes and tells Dana that Sleeping Zool that he'll...
Yeah, she's out.
Yeah, he's like, I'll be back.
He's going to come back. Yeah.
And then it cuts to Walter Peck coming in the next morning. And after they're down there, like, arguing, that's when Peter Venkman, like, pulls up and gets out of his car and goes down there.
Was it the next morning? I thought it was the same day, but maybe you're right.
No, because when he's studying Louis, it's nighttime. Because he was over there for his date. Yeah. Peter was over there for his date.
That's weird. I wonder if there was a deleted scene that we didn't see or something.
Maybe he had already come over and seen Louis.
Yeah, and went back to Dana or something.
Right.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why.
Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because you
that.
were talking about Winston pulling up and
yeah
at the wrong time.
So the reason Dana and Louis have become possessed is because their building is like a hot spot for paranormal activity, right?
It's actually an antenna.
Yeah, it's basically a portal for Gozer, right?
Yeah.
And they are the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper are the two people who can open up the portal. Which is something I never understood. These two dog-like creatures, right? They're actually the Gatekeeper and the Keymaster.
Right.
Their gargoyles were right next door to each other. They were literally on the same, like, balcony.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they broke free, they separated and then had to, like, re-find each other. Why didn't they just... I mean, maybe you had to possess somebody in order for it to, like, work. But it seems like they were right there. Like, once they became free of their gargoyle outer casing, why didn't they just, like, meet up right then?
Good point. They like doing things the hard way.
Yeah, I guess so. Or maybe they possessed Dana because that her apartment was like the central hotspot or whatever, right? So it was like maybe they needed her apartment. Although they don't really need her apartment because they go to the roof. But I was thinking maybe Louis and Dana were kind of targeted specifically.
No, they don't go to the roof.
I thought was the stairs from her apartment?
Wait.
They're in her apartment. He's like, where are these stairs leading? He goes, they go up.
Right.
So I guess it's not the roof. It's outside of her apartment.
But yeah, no. When Louis comes over and gets with her, that's inside her apartment.
Right. So that's what I was saying. I was saying maybe Louis and Dana were picked out ahead of time because of where they lived.
Yeah, probably because he lives on the other side of the hall, so he probably lives underneath the gargoyle, and then she does too.
And that dog monster, whatever you want to call it, was in his apartment during the party. And then when he runs away, the dog chases after him. So I do think maybe he was targeted specifically.
Yes.
To be the Keymaster. But then once you get possessed, though, you don't really have much of a memory. Because he doesn't remember where the Gatekeeper is, and he has to find that building again. It's like he's kind of drawn to the building.
Right.
once he gets outside the building, he like remembers that that's where he needs to go.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know who the Keymaster is either.
Right.
So there's some sort of weird like memory loss once you get possessed.
Right. Yeah, she doesn't remember Peter when...
No.
Yeah, so...
But she also doesn't... But like Zool doesn't know who the Keymaster is.
Right.
She
they have
asks
to
him
ask
if he's
each
the
other.
Keymaster. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting.
I liked when Lewis went up and asked the horse,
Yeah.
Are you the gatekeeper? And then the guy, the horse carriage driver, is talking to him, and then he like says something to the horse. He runs off. He's like, "You shall perish in flames."
Yeah. And trips while he's doing it. Yeah. I think Rick Moranis did a great job with this character.
He did. It's amazing. And he brings up Parcheesi as if it's nerdy. I love Parcheesi, by the way.
That's a game, right?
It is a board game.
Yes,
that
I've
was
never
very
played
popular back in the 60s, and it's kind of disappeared. It's still popular in like Latin, America.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a fun game.
Whatever, nerd.
Yep.
Just kidding.
Hey, we're talking about Ghostbusters here. I think we're both nerds.
Any other notes?
Well, we were talking about they're in prison. They got the blueprints.
Right, and then I think the mayor's last resort is to call in the Ghostbusters to see if the Ghostbusters can do anything to actually clean up this town.
Right.
And the Ghostbusters say, "Yeah, we can clean it up."
Pete, what do you need from me? Then it shows, and then it cuts to the army. Tanks and foot soldiers running down the street. They have a police escort. Peter's like, "Let's run some red lights."
Yeah. He's like loving it at that point. Well, that whole description too of like they're like, "What's going to happen if we don't do anything?" And they start talking about like, the end of days. And I'm not going to quote this correctly because I forget all the things they said, but it's like earthquakes, the sky will be dark. And then Peter's like, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
He threw in human sacrifices too.
Oh yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, like I said, I couldn't remember it all. So the Ghostbusters kind of, I guess, have an advantage. I mean, obviously, it's what they, it's their job. They are the Ghostbusters, but because of Ray and the blueprints, they know exactly where to go, which is Dana's building.
Yeah,
and they immediately get some interference from Gozer or from. I guess it's Gozer. I guess Gozer's kind of been let through by this point because that earthquake happens and they fall into the.
And I just want to say the scene where they're going to Dana's apartment is amazing.
The car ride?
Yes. You've got the music. You see just the crowds of people that are lined up. Obviously, they got a memo.
They're all chanting.
They sent out something on the news. The Ghostbusters are going to this apartment to stop the apocalypse, and everyone comes to watch.
Yeah,
but it's one of those just heroic scenes. You just get goosebumps watching the Ghostbusters coming down the street.
Mm-hmm.
In their Ecto-1.
Yeah, which I always thought was one of the coolest cars.
Absolutely.
It's not, it's not up there with the Batmobile, but it's one of the coolest like on-screen cars, I think.
Absolutely.
And that's basically, the final act of the movie is when they're confronting Gozer. And what is Gozer planning to do? What is Gozer's whole plan?
To take
take over the world?
To give form to some giant creature so it can do some destruction?
Well, that's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right?
Yeah, but Lewis totally mentions that as...
He does, yeah. He talks about how it took two different forms, which were like completely made up words.
Yeah.
which is
in the
something
past.
I also never.
So
really, yeah.
what was? Yeah, I agree. What was the purpose of this? Just to cause some chaos and then leave for a little bit?
Yeah, maybe she's just maybe Gozer is a kind of like Loki. Maybe she's like a mischievous being who just likes to see things tear other things apart or something.
Yeah. I was going to say maybe they did it in other dimensions, but
Maybe.
Egon has history of this demigod Gozer.
Yeah, from Tobin's Spirit Guide.
Right.
I want to see that book, by the way. I think they referenced that book a couple of times throughout the movie.
Right.
And I think they even reference it in the second movie as well. Tobin's Spirit Guide. Well, needless to say, Gozer doesn't like the Ghostbusters. Basically tells them to die. And then, this is another thing that kind of confused me this time around, because I'll be honest, I never really noticed Lewis telling that story about how that creature took the form of this person and wiped out all these.
I hadn't either.
Yeah,
I never
for whatever
really
reason,
listened
that's
to what he said.
Yeah, and as a kid, I think he was just talking gibberish,
right?
But now that I was older, and I actually had the subtitles on this time around, and I watched that scene like 2 times, I was like, oh wow, he's like talking about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man basically before we see him, which is really interesting. But it made it sound like Gozer chooses what kind of form he'll take, and so I wonder why Gozer made the Ghostbusters choose.
Really, I thought he said that they chose. I mean, I think he used the word they,
as in the people they're fighting.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed that then. Maybe you're right. Because then it would make sense that then that's why the Ghostbusters chose.
I do find it curious though how the Ghostbusters are the only ones that are susceptible to choosing.
Well, I'm assuming it's just because they're there to fight. You know.
Gotcha.
Maybe
only
Gozer
the
is
people that oppose Gozer,
right,
are going to be granted the ability to choose their destruction.
Right. And then, by the way, when I was a kid, I always, even though it says it right there on his hat, I always thought it was the State Puffed Marshmallow.
It is Stay Puffed, right?
Yeah, Stay Puffed.
Yeah. I might have used to think it was the Stayed Puff.
Mm-hmm. And the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is just another example of Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis and probably even Ivan Reitman's kind of comedic genius. Because here comes this giant monster, kind of like King Kong or Godzilla even, kind of coming down this, in between the buildings, coming down the street, stepping on cars and everything. And he just has this huge smile on his face. Right. Like he's just loving it.
And that's something I missed as a kid.
Yeah, same here.
Because there's this first of all, I loved the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man as a kid.
I did too.
I remember Toys R Us had this thing where they had all these like mascot, costume wearing things. They had Jeffrey the giraffe, which was the mascot of Toys R Us. And
right.
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was there, and that's why I went. Like my mom told me about it and was like, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is going to be there. I'm like, we're going.
You just like ran out got into the car right then.
Yes. So yeah, I was a big Stay Puft Marshmallow Man fan, but it wasn't because he was like, I did not understand that comedy at all. Like I was saying, it was just
right.
This giant monster creature.
It just kind of goes over your head, yeah. Like I think when we were kids, we just really enjoyed it because it was the Ghostbusters, and they were fighting ghosts, and they wore cool proton packs and things like that, and it was fun.
And I think,
but I never. If you had asked me when I was a kid, granted, I probably wouldn't be able to differentiate as a young kid, but like if you were to say, "Is this a comedy?" I would have been like, "No."
Right.
But now as an adult, it's like obviously a comedy.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. As a kid, no, it's not a comedy. This is a serious movie. They're fighting ghosts, and these guys are heroes.
Right, exactly.
I think it's funny because I think when they're like, "Who did you choose, Ray?" and he's like, "The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man." I think I had watched the cartoon as a lot too,
Yeah.
As a kid too, and I think because of that, sometime I remember hearing that line, that they had a history with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So he's like, and this is another example of how I did not pick up that it was supposed to be funny, because he's like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and the reaction that the Ghostbusters give to me when I was a kid, I was like, oh, they're thinking, not again. We have to fight this gigantic beast again. I
can see that.
Yeah,
definitely, because they all know who he is right away.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like, and in the cartoons, they would have had reoccurring, like the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
They had to fight the Boogeyman a couple times. So I'm thinking, they've got to do it again, and they're not happy about this. Crossing the streams. That's something another thing I was going to bring up was all the lines in the movie, all the scenes, even more than I mentioned this for the Turtles, watching the movie, and it's almost like it's like a play or something where everything's woven together. Every movement, every head shake, every dialogue, every piece of dialogue, and the way that they deliver it is all just, it's like a piece of music or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got when they're bringing up the crossing the streams, and you hear Ray just go, "Cross the streams." It's just, that line has to be in that movie, said that exact way.
Yeah. And that's, I think that just, has to do with the fact that we grew up on this movie.
It does.
We watched it so many times as a kid.
Yeah. If you go watch it, for the first time now, you're not going to have that experience.
Right.
But yeah, this is literally a masterpiece that cannot be altered in any way. And you think about how when they're filming this, and just like any other movie, they're just doing their roles. And, Dan Aykroyd busts in through a room one way and probably did 3 or 4 takes on it.
Mm-hmm.
But that one take, it's just the one they happened to choose because, for whatever reason, it was the best one they had or whatever. But that take is Ghostbusters now. It's amazing to think about.
Yeah. Well, I guess we don't really have too much else to say about the movie. So do you want to go ahead and rate it?
5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. This one gets an A+ in my book, so there's not really. I mean, it's I was going to say it's a comedic masterpiece, but that might be going. It is. It's one of my favorite comedies, obviously. So yeah, A+. I don't have any.
To really think about how original this movie was when it came out too, and the writing. At one time, people were seeing this movie for the first time.
Yeah.
Never, heard the comedy lines that they came up with. This movie is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Absolute masterpiece.
I agree with you. So, we'd love to hear what you think about Ghostbusters. Let us know. You can leave us a comment on cinemaheroes.com, or you can go to Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM podcast, or you can throw us a line on Twitter @cinemaheroes. I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading.